great to be here. Long flight, but the hospitality, Mr. Mayor, from you and you know your team has been very, very gracious, and thank you very much. So, CompStat, you know, it is the management tool of the New York City Police Department, right? And it's about accountability. It's a management tool of accountability that we put on our commanders. I was lucky a couple of years ago to sit on a panel just like this, and that was the 30-year anniversary of CompStat. We've been doing it for 32, but a couple of years ago, again, I sat on a panel. It was myself, it was Commissioner Bratton, who started CompStat in 1994. It was Chief Anamone, who was the chief of department at the time of the start of CompStat in 1994, and there was another chief that was one of the architects of CompStat, and I was honored to sit on that panel. And I remember a question that they asked me, because I have been going to CompStat as a commander since 2001, right? So a lot of years on the other side of the podium, and a lot of years on the dais side of it, running CompStat as the Chief of Crime Control Strategies. I'm also honored to say that I was the longest tenured Chief of Crime Control Strategies for 6 years, and then lucky enough to be tapped by Commissioner Tisch to run the police department as Chief of Department. So I'll go back to my question that I was asked. Somebody from the audience says, so tell me what has changed in 30 years of CompStat? You've been going for so many years, and what's the big change? You know what I said? I said, not much except for data analytics and how granular the New York City Police Department has gotten with their analytics. And it could not be done without our amazing civilian intelligence. We have intelligence analysts and we have criminal analysts. Without them, the police department could never be able to use the precision policing model. And the precision policing model, Richard, put the next slide up. The precision policing model goes back to about 10 years ago, where we knew if you throw out this large net and just kind of like police not being organized, it does not work. It does not work. So we shifted. We shifted in 2016, and the next 3 years after that, we had the lowest number of shooting victims, shooting incidents in the history of New York City. 2020, there was a terrible incident in the Midwest part of the United States, and things changed across the whole country. And the New York City Police Department and other police departments saw a doubling of what we just saw the year before of shooting victims, shooting incidents. And I remember the then chief of department coming to me and saying, can you get us out of this? And I said, yeah. I said, I can get you out of this. Not me, but I think my strategies on how to get out of this. And I remember him saying, all right, well, do it. And that's when I tapped my #1 data scientist in crime control strategies. And I said to her, I want to know the areas of New York City that has the most violent street crime. And when I say violent street crime, I talk about robberies and I talk about shooting incidents and grand larceny snatches, right? You snatch a bag, just like I understand that's an issue plaguing Rio. And I said, but I need to know the exact times, and I need to know other things that are helping fuel that plague of violence in small areas. And she comes back to me and she shows me this program. But what I'm talking about right now is extremely important because it's an experienced commander who knows policing talking to a very experienced, smart data scientist. And I basically said, build me this. And she built it. And then I said, okay, field deployment in the New York City Police Department is the #1 strategy to combat violent street crime, field deployment. I mean, how else would you do it? I don't know. I know my way of doing it was put the police officers on foot in those areas, but it has to be the right time. It has to be continuous. When I say continuous, I would put 2 police officers on one block. If you don't put 2 police officers on the next block and then 2 police officers on the next block, that's not really doing much. Because what you're doing is you're making a force multiplier, again, using data analytics to combat street crime. But it has to be a layered approach. It has to be a layered approach. It's just not police officers standing on a footpost between the hours of 4 p.m. and 4 a.m. That's a big part of it. But what we also asked was our other units, our narcotics officers, our gang investigation officers, our intelligence officers, to concentrate their policing in that area. And what we saw last year was by far the lowest number of shooting victims in New York City, the lowest number of shooting incidents in New York City in the history of CompStat, 32 years. We then talk about intelligence. We have intelligence offices embedded in every area of New York City. And again, who do we have embedded with the intelligence offices? Civilian analysts. Intelligence, 2 sides of it. The analytical side of intelligence and the operational side of intelligence. That intelligence lives within one system in the New York City Police Department. The detective who caught that robbery types into that system, as does the intelligence officer, types into that system, and it all comes together. And if we were not able to do that, I do not know how we would police in New York City. I've traveled a lot. I have, mostly doing this, talking about CompStat. I've traveled to many states in New York City. I've traveled Dominican Republic, other areas. And when I sit down with those commanders, that is the #1 problem that I see within their commands. And they ask me, they said, well, how are you able to do this in New York City, and we're not able to do this in Chicago, Detroit, things of that nature? And I said, because you're sitting in this room and you're all talking a different language. You're not all working together as one. You're not all sharing the intelligence. You're not all sharing, you know, who these perpetrators are or the areas of issues. It is just so important, and Mr. Mayor's hitting it. He really is. You know, we have 15,000 civilians that work in the New York City Police Department, right? It's just not analysts. We have social workers that work in the New York, you know, that have a social work background. We have scientists, not just on the data scientists, but our lab, we have very, very smart civilians. Without the civilian force and integrating all of the expertise of the civilians, again, we couldn't do it without them. Couldn't do it without them. 50,000 strong in the New York City Police Department, 35,000 uniformed members, and 15,000 civilians. So we talk about CompStat, right? And it's here, I just spoke about it. It's #1, it's a communication tool. The best of the best ideas are had at CompStat. And when a commander presents to me and he or she is coming up with this strategy that they used to combat street robberies, I said, well, we're going to do that same thing across the city of New York, because that's a great idea. And when we have CompStat, the commanders, all of them, if they're not in the room, they're listening. We tell them, you have to listen to CompStat, because you're going to learn from your fellow commanders, but you're going to also learn from experienced chiefs. Safety and tactics, we talk tactics. We talk tactics at CompStat, and then ultimately a joint strategy. Okay, these are the principles of CompStat, and when I say principles of CompStat, like, we really, really mean this. Like, all of these principles are discussed, right? Accurate and timely intelligence, we spoke about that. Knowing what is happening through data and obviously field investigations. Effective tactics, rapid deployment. When I say rapid deployment, we don't wait. If we have 2 robberies on the same block perpetrated at the same time by the same individuals, it's not that we discuss it the next day, it's real time. And we move resources real time. And we're seeing it, we see it pop up through technology, that we just saw 2 robberies on the same block. And then so then it starts as far as what's the field deployment? How long did it take the officers to get to the scene? What is the quality of the complaint report that the officers took? Because guess what? Good data in, bad data, good data in, good data out. Bad data in, bad data out. And I know a lot of you saying, well, what do you mean? Well, we'll go back, we'll look at the body-worn camera, and we see that there was a lot of information that the person who was robbed gave the officers. But a lot of that information did not make it onto the complaint report. So you're missing all this data. And there has to be a quality control to everything. If there is not a quality control to everything, again, that's not precision policing. Quality control, how did the officers take that report? If an officer makes an arrest, did they put the tattoos on the report? So then later on, when I have a crime with a tattoo that the victim says, a cross tattoo, I could put cross tattoo into the system and see everybody who's got arrested in New York City that has a cross tattoo. But if the officer who made the arrest did not put the cross tattoo on the report, I lose that. I lose that, right? Apartment numbers, very, very important. An arrest, where do you live, sir? I live at 335 ABC Street, apartment 13G. But the 13G didn't make it on that arrest report. Now that perpetrator does another crime. We know who he is. We now have our warrants division looking to apprehend that person. But guess what? The officer didn't put 13G on that arrest report, so now I have a building with 15 floors. My warrants detectives can't find this person because they don't know what apartment, because we didn't put it on the report. Extremely important. And again, these are all principles of CompStat. CompStat metrics. Being proactive. Right? It's about preventing crime. We do very, very well with our investigators that investigate crime. We solve about 70% of our murders. We solve approximately 46% of all our shooting incidents. And let me tell you, 46% of shooting incidents in New York City are solved. The complainants of those shootings are usually not very cooperative, but we are relentless in doing what we can to bring that case to a success. That's another thing that a lot of agencies across New York City, across the United States, if they have a shooting victim and that person basically says, I don't care, a lot of agencies will not investigate that. Not the New York City Police Department. We'll go a different way. We'll do something different. We might not charge the actual shooting victim, but we'll charge the shots fired then, because you don't need a complainant, right? We say, okay, you don't have to be the best complainant, but we are relentless in our investigations. And again, this is all measured at CompStat. Right? We look at investigations, as I said about the field deployment, investigations, every aspect of policing is measured at CompStat. Obviously strategic. What's your analysis? What's the plan? What's the results of your plan? I tell commanders that all the time. I say, give me an analysis of your robberies. I want to hear about it. Okay, you gave me a good analysis. I said, what's your plan? Tells me his or her plan. And I said, well, the results speak for itself. You need a different plan. That's why you're here at CompStat. Change your plan. got to be reactive, and obviously you have to be predictive. Talking to the mayor at an event yesterday, I should say. I did the one thing that I said when I took over as Chief of Crime Control Strategies to myself. I said, well, actually a few things. I said, yeah, I'm going to be tough. You better believe I'm going to be tough, because policing is really serious business. I said, but I'm going to be fair, because I've been on the other side of that podium many, many times. But what I also said to myself, I'm going to demand speak about my thoughts. I said, I will never, ever ask a question in a CompStat forum unless I know the answer to it. Why would I ask a question if I don't know the answer? Because they could be telling me something that's really not truthful. Every question I ask, I know the answer to. And I demanded the other chiefs do the same thing. I said, do not ask a question in this forum unless you know the answer to it. It's not effective, and it doesn't work. So that was that, yeah, one more. So that was the decline. I talked about our precision policing going back to 2025. You see where we came from, the lowest number of shooting incidents in New York City in the history. You know, everything here means something. And I hit this before, but I want to talk about discretion. Discretion is important in policing. And you know, you can't, like, why is Chief LiPetri talking about discretion? Because discretion starts with engagement. I tell my officers that all the time, my commanders all that. I say, you can't I could say this, you can't drive by or walk by 4 individuals that are drinking beers, being loud and disorderly. You can't, because that's a precursor of something that's going to happen larger. We know that through data analytics. But I can't tell that officer that he or she has to write a summons, or he or she has to make an arrest. But we can tell them in New York City, you have to engage that problem. You're not doing your job. But we don't tell them what they need to do. They could use discretion. They could say, hey, move on. Hey, lower the music. Very important. Discretion is important in policing, especially in the United States, especially in New York City, but it starts with engaging the problem and fixing the problem. Doesn't always have to be by enforcement, but you got to fix the problem. And we demand our commanders to do that every day. This is the foundation, again, of a lot of things that I've discussed about CompStat. And it all comes together. And there isn't a slide that doesn't have analytics. There isn't a slide that, you know, when I talk about the building blocks of CompStat and policing in New York City, that does not talk about our amazing data scientists. They are embedded everywhere across New York City. They're embedded within our robbery squads. They're embedded within our grand larceny squads. They're embedded within our auto crime squads. They're embedded within our intelligence. I spoke about this before, our intelligence officers. And it's precision at its best. Go ahead, Rich. Yeah. Okay, so this is a CompStat. We're going to play a little bit of it, all right? So this is an actual CompStat. I am sitting there. I'm asking the questions, right? That's the local commanders. That's the investigators. They're all standing there together as one team. They're all standing there together as one team. Now, in particular, this commander was having an issue with robberies. He had multiple robberies in a very small area. That's why he's up at the podium, because of that. And if you listen, again, I know the answer to each one of these questions. I'm asking him, and it's pretty intense. We'll play some of it. Yeah.
Reported 15, 28 hours. 4-2 squad notified.
It's not loud enough.
Went out to the scene.
Yeah, same day. You know, that's what we're looking for. You know, fast response, no doubt about it. You guys are right out there interviewing people.
Basically, it's this 2-story walk-up, female victim's home on the 2nd floor. She's home in her bedroom.
So this is
She
the
has a
command
male
we're talking.
roommate that's in another room, Sergio Flores. She hears a lot of noise by her front apartment door. She goes to look, and 2 male Hispanics, one light-skinned wearing a bandana, red bandana, another not wearing a mask, push into the apartment. They push her back to her bedroom, and they specifically ask her where the money is, where's your son's room?
Right, so they're targeting the son's room.
Talking the son's room.
Right.
That's what we think.
All right, so, you know, we interviewed the 911 caller. He's pretty articulate, right?
Yes.
Tells us some vital information.
He lives on the first floor, Mr. Delgado. They interviewed him.
What does he tell us? Just real quick. We're going to try to move. 'cause
Real
we gotta
quick,
get
he
to 4,
says
6.
early in the day he sees a black Nissan Maxima. He gives us New Jersey plates in front with 2 males that look suspicious, trying to pry open a door.
All right, so we get a plate that day. Doesn't he talk about possibly that he saw these same perps try to get into his gate the day before?
That I don't recall, no.
I think so. What do we do with the car? I mean, we got a car. We have a great lead. We have an articulable witness. What do we do with that car?
My detective does work upon the car, comes back to a Tanya Arias from New Jersey.
And what do we do with Tanya?
Tanya, right now, we're trying to track her down.
Do we do a workup of Tanya and try to connect her to possible perpetrators? Because we pretty much know it's not Tanya doing this robbery.
Well, a workup was done. She's got no history.
I don't see any of this.
This was just after the case was pulled.
All right, look, again, for a matter of time, you guys know how to put that together. You have a car. I got no alerts on this car for 14 days, and I got 77 LPR hits from the time after this robbery. Talk about safety.
Again, I spoke to my detective. He talked to the witness. The witness is saying 2 other guys got into a yellow car. So we didn't have enough to put a felony alarm on that car.
I'm not saying
that.
that's not what I said.
We should have put a DOS. You're correct.
That is not what I said. That is not the procedure. We've been over this time and time again. You put the alert on the car the proper way so then the cop in whatever precinct knows at least that this car is involved somewhat in a robbery. All right? These are ground ball misses, and I'm going to really, 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 really look hard when it comes to safety, and this is one that it comes to safety. All right? So did you connect her to a possible suspect?
The girl owns the car?
Yeah.
No, I have not.
All right, so I'm going to have to give you this. All right? She's a perp on a DV aggravated harassment. All right? That victim is a bad guy who just did 3 years for a firearm sale that you need to look at. All right? So my office will be giving you all this information. Have you shown anybody the stills of the 2 suspects? I don't see you showing the 911 caller who sees him the day before, who sees him that day. I don't have you, the son. Why do you think they're targeting the sons?
All right. I can let it play for a little longer, but I kind of want to recap it, right? That's not easy, right? It's not easy. And I know it's not easy. But again, public safety, right? CompStat, a management tool. If you're listening to what I'm saying, it's everything that I talked about up until I played that video. The agency, we look at everything when it comes to investigating a crime. Again, I'll recap it. The patrol officers, we look to see how long did it take them to get to the scene of that crime. Why did they go the long way? We look at their automated vehicle alerts that we can put on a map, and we see how they got to that location. We obviously look at the customer service. How did those officers treat that complainant? How long did it take them to give a description out? Did they do a canvas with the complainant? This is all getting measured. How many officers responded to the scene? Did they all respond to the scene where they should not have? Some respond to the scene, some should be still in the field canvassing for possible perpetrators. Did they take the elevator to the 7th floor when the crime happened on the 7th floor? That's terrible tactics. You take it to the 6th floor, and you walk up 1 flight. We look at this, and we measure this all. Again, was key information given to the offices put on the report? The complaint reporting system in New York City has to be, and we demand, the highest integrity that we have. It is measured by many different units throughout New York City. If we find commanders, I say this all the time, I tell young commanders, you're not going to lose your crime, you're not going to lose your command for being up in crime or up in violence unless you're unprepared and we feel that you're not actually doing the job. But there's very few commanders that happens to. There's probably more commanders that lose their command for hiding crime and not taking the proper crime reports. Data, when I say data integrity, I talk about also the quality and the integrity of the complaint reporting system. That is extremely important. How are you going to know if you have a problem of shoplifting in a certain store if you're not taking the complaint report? How else would you measure that? You might look at 911 calls, okay, but you have to get the complaint reports to investigate the crime. Very important. So then I started with this commander on the patrol response, and now I move into the investigation. And now this is where there were some things done on this investigation that were not done well. And I took him through it. But I didn't just say, you didn't do this, you didn't do this. I told him basically how to do it. And I said, did you run the vehicle for license plate reader hits? They didn't. And I came up with 70, my team, myself, we came up with 77 hits in a very tight area where obviously we think that perpetrator's car frequents. They didn't interview the 911 caller. The 911 caller was extremely articulate. We listened to it on tape. I remember myself and my team sitting there listening to it on tape and getting all this great information. Then we look at we call it our ICAD system, so we see it typed out also. That didn't make it into the case, and the interview of the 911 operator didn't make it into the case. Unacceptable. And I told the commander that. And there's accountability for this, trust me. But what's important is, I said it before, everybody sitting in that room hears what I'm saying, and everybody across the city, the commanders, are hearing what I'm saying. So they're saying to themselves, I know I would, I'm not going to make that mistake. I'm not going to make that mistake. I don't want to be that person. And, you know, it really is a communication tool, but most importantly, it's a management system. I'm going to wrap up. I'm going to be sitting on the panel, so I'll have more to say. You know, I really have to say, I've been the chief of department for New York City for now, I don't know, 3-4 months. Honored to lead the department as the highest uniform officer, but it's the men and women out there every single day that do the toughest job in New York City that gets the job done. And I tell, whenever I see them, whenever I talk to commanders, it's always about I call it the 3 C's, right? Cops, community, crime. Cops being number 1, community being number 2, and crime being number 3. And I know a lot of you saying, crime's number 3? Yeah, because if you take care of the cops, it takes care of the community, which takes care of the crime. Remember that. Cops, community, crime. We've done very well with those, you know, with those 3 all working together. Thank you very much. Sit here? Yeah. Sure. I'm just going to take my water.